Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As we mentioned earlier in the beginning of this edition of The Breakfast Show, we'll be talking about tourism. Numerous efforts are exerted to maintain the tourism business surviving here in Egypt. That included, of course, efforts by the government and efforts by the people working in the industry. We have seen the resumption of flights coming from various countries to Egypt. We have seen projects to restore certain monuments here in Egypt. These are just examples of so many efforts to keep the tourism business going on here in Egypt, especially in light of the beautiful weather Egypt enjoys and its beautiful destination. So in order to shed more light on that important issue, we're very much delighted to have with us our dear guest, Dr. Yehia Abdel, Tourism Counselor. Good morning to you, Dr. Yehia.
Good morning.
Now, to start with, recently The Guardian chose Mosque Madrasa of Sultan Barou among the 10 virtual tours of spectacular buildings around the world. How important is that, and in what way could this contribute to attracting more tourists to Egypt?
Well, really, recently the British media, has been recommended, through The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Economist, lots of them, to visit, to encourage their viewership, to encourage them to visit, and check, at least, check out virtually, the monuments of Egypt, like Sultan Barkouk Mosque at Muazzez Street, that belongs to Mamluk era of Islamic era in the history of Egypt. And it is regarded as one of the top 10, archaeological and heritage sites for visitors, to check virtually until, most of Europe is still in a lockdown. So later when they are released, so they can visit this destination. So this is really very prestigious, as well as, this is, pro bono, it's the Guardian and the Telegraph and the Economist. I mean, this is not a campaign or any kind of promotion from our side. Mm-hmm. So this is great news that European and international media, prestigious one, like the one we're mentioning, are encouraging their viewership to check Egyptian monuments and visit when conditions provides accessibility.
To what extent can virtual tours actually persuade people around the world to come and visit Egypt, to visit the real sites?
Well, thank God, we are going through this pandemic, because many things in our lives for the past year has changed. Education, technology, travel, tourism, conferences and meetings and conventions has been, developed to modify, with the current crisis we are going through. So virtual tours is very beneficial, and European countries, and even individuals, they like to do the Zoom, technique. So I know about tour guides in Egypt that they conduct tours for 90 minutes. For example, talking about the Saqqara necropolis, discoveries, the Valley of the Kings, the new discoveries in Western, Alexandria, Greco-Roman sites. And it's paid, it's pay-per-view. They pay about 20 euros, to watch for 90 minutes. All these antiquities being discovered, and some of it restored or innovated. And even they watch progress of the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is going to open soon, inshallah. And they tell the presenter that as soon as, the airlines will be accessible from France or Paris or Vienna to Egypt, they are going to, and some of them, I called some of the tour guides, and he said some of those people were reviewing and watching the virtual tours. They are currently coming now to Egypt. Mm-hmm. So this is great benefit, of course.
Of course. Speaking of airlines, Moldova and Lithuania resumed flights through the Red Sea resort of Hurghada. How important is that?
Really, this is a great blessing, because the Red Sea resort, stretching all the way from Taba up to Marsa Alam, has been receiving visitors since last May, when we opened up tourism with considering all the regulations of the WHO and the WTO. So really, last week we've been receiving tours from Moldova and from Lithuania, and every week we are going to receive 3 flights weekly from Lithuania. So Eastern Europe, are determined to come to when it is so cold and freezing, in the rest of the world. We have a beautiful, warm and sunny weather on our Red Sea resort, so that's why they benefit, and they come on charter flights, which is affordable. So that's what we're going to be having like mass tourism soon, inshallah.
So do you expect other countries to follow suit and to resume their flights to
Definitely.
charter flights at least?
Yeah, we have Ukraine, we have Czech, we have Poland, we have Hungary, Montenegro. I mean, through the last 2 months, we've been receiving airlines tours from all these countries, yes.
Dr. Yehia, among the many efforts exerted to make the tourism business survive during COVID-19, the restoration of so many temples, including the Dendera temple, a very important one. Would you shed light on that temple and efforts to restore temples? How would that bring more tourists to Egypt?
Yeah, really, the Dendera temple is one of the unique icons of Egyptology and archaeology in Egypt. It has been established within the Middle Kingdom, and this is dedicated to Hathor. Hathor is like one of the most prominent deities of ancient Egypt, you know, like versus Isis. These are the top two. It represented, you know, like joy, love, music, motherhood, and she was protector of the infant and, you know, like newly born. That's why she was so venerated, and it has a beautiful face of a woman and the ears of a cow. And this temple is dedicated to her, and it has been restored many times, like in ancient in Middle Kingdom and again in Greco-Roman time. And now it's located in the governor of Kenya, in the city of Dendera, and has been restored. And a long time ago, I know that many tours from Europe, you know, like they come because it's so beautiful, decorated, and nearly intact. And there was a zodiac sign, you know, like that represents the 12, you know, like month of the week and the horoscopes. And I think it has been moved to the Louvre, and there is a substitute, you know, like in its location.
Yes.
So it's a great, really, opportunity to restore and innovate again.
Yes. Speaking of projects, there is also the Promenade project on the Nile Corniche. Would you shed more light on it?
Yeah, this is really the efforts of the government to upgrade, you know, like the facilities in the greater city of Cairo that have like over 20 million, you know, like residents and millions of visitors that come annually. So all the way from Rod al-Farag up to Maspero and all the way to Maadi, that's a stretch of like 30 kilometers. The armed forces, you know, like Corps has been developed this area. We are going to have a promenade, you know, like an avenue for people to walk away and, you know, like enjoy the view of the River Nile, as well as going to be like food stands for people who like to have snacks. And then they can exercise because we have like 2 lanes for bikers who like to ride bikes and cycle all the way.
That should be exciting.
Exactly, yeah. So this is going to give so much relief for, you know, like young men and residents of Egypt and visitors as well to go and enjoy, you know, like this beautiful recreational part of Cairo.
Yes. Well, let's speak more about the flights and the importance of countries resuming their flights to Egypt despite COVID-19. How important is that in your own opinion, Dr. Yehia?
Well, we have, you know, like to match, you know, like with the requirements, criteria and regulations of the WHO, of the ICAO, of the IATA. For example, last week, we've been lucky because we have 2 major airports in Egypt, Sohag and Asyut. They have been accredited by the ACI so that it is, you know, like sanitized and hygiene and safe, you know, like for international visitors to come. As well as Egypt Air itself, our national carrier, they received the ISO accreditation as well.
Yes.
So that means we have at least in Egypt now 30 to 35 airports. All of them has been certified and accredited by the World Aviation Organizations and Association.
Yes. Let's talk about sports, Dr. Yehia. In your own opinion, how can sport actually bring more tourists to Egypt? We have seen Egypt organizing several championships, and also it is expected to host the shooting championship. So how can sports actually bring more tourists?
Well, sports really is a great generator of global, you know, like income, you know, like revenues for any destination. For example, you know, like the final games for the Rose Bowl, that's every year, you know, like matched, you know, like managed in Pasadena in California. So this means like about like millions and billions of dollars for the site where you host, you know, like an international event like World Cup and Wimbledon, Roland Garros, whatever the event. That's why the whole country will be fighting and challenging, you know, like to host the Olympics, for example, like in Tokyo, Sydney, or whatever. So this is one of the benefits of sport. So last week we concluded the world shooting competition, you know, like on October 6th, and our Egyptian team, luckily, we won silver medals, you know, like.
Yes.
But in 2020, we are going to be hosting the international, you know, like shooting competition as well. Last week, we've been so lucky because we received gold, silver, and bronze medals in at least 7 to 8 sports, in shooting, and swimming, and wrestling, and taekwondo, and table tennis, and equestrian, and cycling. Our team, you know, like came number 2 in Africa, winning, you know, like silver medals. So sports, apart from generating revenues and making the destination more hospitable and accessible, it reflects the image that there is, you know, like challenge and there is perseverance, and the young men of the country work hard to, you know, like to win medals, and that reflects on the country itself when you see them winning, you know, like competitions and bringing gold and silver cups to the country.
Definitely. When you mentioned Saqqara necropolis, I wanted to ask about the significant discoveries, especially in Saqqara necropolis. How would that attract the attention of the whole world to this particular area and bring in more tourists? How can those discoveries announced by the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities in international press conferences with the attendance of ambassadors of various countries, reporters from around the globe, how can this promote this particular area in Egypt?
Well, Saqqara, you know, like is the prime site for or necropolis, which means like burial place in Egypt, because since the early dynasty, you know, like the old kingdom, we know about the kings, you know, like Snefru, Cheops, Khephren, Mykerinnes. So this is where the trials for the step pyramids and the early pyramids to be developed in that area, and even until like Middle and New Kingdom, the kings of Egypt and the pharaohs, they were having their burial sites, and some of them were having like 2 burial sites, like one in the Valley of the Kings, but another one in the necropolis, because like this is like for them the prime location. And they were, in ancient Egyptian, were the first people in mankind to believe in the hereafter, that there is life after death. That's why they went through mummification and to choose their burial sites. Some of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings go like 60 to 70 meters deep, you know, like in the rock. So this is a firm belief, and we've been discovering over the past year like hundreds of mummies that belongs to the 26th dynasty and other dynasties. And when we look at them, they look intact, like they've been like wrapped yesterday.
With the colors vivid and everything.
Exactly.
As if they were painted last week.
Definitely, and nobody can do this until now.
Yes.
So visitors, you know, like in world media, they cover these events, you know, like, and when, you know, like conditions will be available for them, they will be coming to tour the Saqqara. I know about many dignitaries and celebrities, when they come to Egypt, they go to Saqqara and they go to the Giza Plateau. And shortly, inshallah, the Grand Egyptian Museum will be opening, and will enjoy, you know, like the rare heritage of Egypt and Egyptology.
Yes. Dr. Yehia, if we're talking about promoting tourism here in Egypt, not only through regular media, but also social media. I have seen so many sites on social media dedicated to promoting tourism, some of them around the world and some of them dedicated to Egypt. And young Egyptians, travelers, adventurers, actually use or utilize their passion for traveling, yes. And they talk about their trips to Egypt, about their trips to certain touristic destinations. And this actually raised my attention to the importance of vloggers and bloggers, and perhaps the government again paid attention to that and invited several of them to talk about the country.
Well, that's true because last week we had like some athletic celebrities, like we have American football player, and then we have Luis
Spanish,
Figo, yes, and
yes.
Portuguese, and we have Roberto Carlos, and really we have Silvago, like there were three of the world champion.
And they posted on their Instagram accounts that they are standing and taking pictures in front of one of the ancient
Monuments.
worlds. Yes, one of the wonders of the ancient world.
Exactly, and any one of them, like he at least, has like, like a fans of like about 3 million. So this is very positive because you see them coming to Egypt. But I would like the Ministry of Tourism that diversify, they bring them all the time, showing them next to the pyramids. But pyramids is like culture tourism, but you have to see, to show, like to the rest of the world, really, I mean, like daily life or what they do. They go to a restaurant, for example, so they can eat kebab, they can eat falafel, they can go to the souk, go to the bazaar, like they do some shopping, they roll through the Nile. So, I mean, I've been watching like social media for like years, but this looks like an instant photos. I mean, every celebrity we have, like media, movies, celebrities, sports, writers, poets, musicians, they show them just like next to the great three pyramids of the Giza Plateau. That's all, it's one shot. But we have, like to develop and invest in them more than that. Because visitors, apart from the culture, which is 20% of the pie, like of tourism, like there are other, I mean, they can exercise, they can shop, they can eat, they can play music, they can enjoy concerts. So these are the other aspects you have to show to the world. It's not only archaeology and Egyptology, they draw visitors, but they have to show them, like the other attractions that we have, like.
Yes. Before we went on air, I was talking to you about how I wish to see better river transportation services and how would that actually help in the flow of tourists who would actually use the Nile instead of regular traffic to go to various places, especially downtown, especially Tahrir. So in your opinion, if we have a huge project that would actually have various types of ferries, of felucas, of speedboats, of taxi boats, how would that promote tourism? How would that help tourists in moving from one spot to another and at the same time enjoy the river tour?
Enjoy the ride, yeah. Really, like since Pharaonic times, like the Nile was like the major passage, like of traffic, of trade, of monuments, of everything that the ancient Egyptians were going through. For example, some of the obelisk, like when they move it from the quarries in Aswan, they weigh 50 tons and 100 tons. And these were moved, like through the Nile River, It was very, like sophisticated techniques by the time. And then we know about the cruise of Antony and Cleopatra, like going all the way from Thebes up to, like the old world to see like the majestic antiquities of ancient Egypt. So this is one thing we can do because there is no traffic lights, there is no jam, there is no stops. And I
there
heard
is a beautiful ride in one of the world's tallest rivers.
Longest river, yeah. That's true. And like I heard sometime that there is like a private corporation who are having like a water taxi when you can take it from Cairo, go to Maadi within 15 minutes, like from Zamalek to Maadi. So this is one thing that we have to, like invest in and make it, like popular, like so we don't use the traffic all the time, like the roads because it is jammed on certain times, like and there's traffic jams. But really, the River Nile, and I think, like Mr. Kamel Waziri, like Minister of Transportation, he can, like take advantage of this. Besides the excellent, like railways network that he is, like spreading all over the country.
And upgrading now, the railway is upgrading right now.
They're investing billions, like in this network, all the way from Alamein to Al-Sokhna. So really, these are great developments for Egypt and residents and visitors as well, yes.
How can education bring in more tourists to Egypt? How can the fact that Egypt is inaugurating several universities around Egypt, especially in areas like Alamein, like Galila. How can that actually attract the attention of people around the world to come and visit these areas?
Well, definitely you are absolutely right, because in England at least they have like 500,000 foreign students, and they bring so much, revenues through the admissions that they pay. I mean, this semester, we have at Galileo University. I've been there twice, and it's a beautiful location. They have 14 colleges, and it's unbelievable, the design, the style, the facilities they have. We opened, 3 universities, last semester, the King Salman, in Sharm el-Sheikh and Southern Sinai, and then the Galala one, and then the Alamein. We're having the Lausanne Hotel School opening soon. So, and even last week, Dr. Magid Negm, President of Helwan University, and Dr. Abdel, Minister of Education, they laid the foundations for another extension campus for the Helwan University, which is going to host and house 48 colleges. Some of these, are introducing, artificial intelligence, space, education, nutrition, marine technology, and some of them is going to be sophisticated hotel schools. So Egypt now is becoming a hub. We have thousands of foreign and Arab students who love to come
African
to study in
students as
Egypt.
well.
Exactly, yeah, from the whole world. I meet even French and from Belgium, from Holland. They come to study Arabic and history and Egyptology. So really Egypt, with the strategy of the government, now we are opening, new colleges and universities. Going to be new University of Mansoura as well, and there are lots of them in Upper Egypt as well. So the education brings students and upgrades the community and introduces new disciplines, which we didn't have apart from the classic ones that we teach like a century ago at least.
Yes, and speaking of Upper Egypt, since you mentioned Upper Egypt, we have so many beautiful places in Upper Egypt that did not take the proper position on the touristic map here in Egypt, like Minya, for example, with its beautiful temples, with its location on the Nile, with its corniche, with everything that it has. Why can't we again shed light on the beautiful cities that can actually attract tourists, but they don't for the current moment?
Yeah, absolutely right, because I was reviewing media last week, and if you live in Cairo with 20-25 million and you like to spend like a weekend, where you go for locals? I mean, we're talking about visitors. For example, next to Cairo there's Fayoum. Fayoum is a beautiful oasis which I think the government has to dedicate a budget and bright ideas to develop for like a day trip or excursion, something like that. If you go north, you have Ismailia. We have to develop satellite locations associated and around Cairo in the vicinity of 30-50 miles, when you can go spend the day and come. That will invigorate the local economy. It will give a chance of labor in this area, apart from using agriculture and raising cattle and all these activities you do. Next to El Fayoum, there's El Minya. And I think it has to be developed by the Ministry of Tourism as a unique location. The ancient name is Acht Aton, which is like the horizon of God Aton, and that was the seat of government for Akhenaton for about 18 years. This has to develop like a theme, and really I've been there twice. It's a beautiful city. The people of Minya are very intelligent and smart. They have universities for the government, and you have private universities as well.
Yes.
We have to invest really in Upper Egypt, which is going to benefit all of us.
Okay. I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Yehia Abdel, our tourism counselor. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us during this segment of The Breakfast Show, but more yet to come after a short break. Stay tuned.